A Course in Miracles. Lesson 73. I will there be light. Today we are considering the will you share with God. This is not the same as the ego's idle wishes, out of which darkness and nothingness arise. The will you share with God has all the power of creation in it. The ego's idle wishes are unshared and therefore have no power at all. Its wishes are not idle in the sense that they can make a world of illusions in which belief can be very strong. But they are idle indeed in terms of creation. They make nothing that is real. Idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world that is seen. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it, and the ego's need for grievances, which are necessary to maintain it, peoples it with figures that seem to attack and call for righteous judgment. These figures become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances. They stand between awareness and a brother's reality. Beholding them, neither the brother nor the self is known. The will is lost in this strange bartering, in which guilt is traded back and forth, and grievances increase with each exchange. Can such a world have been created by the will the Son of God shares with his Father? Did God create disaster for his Son? Creation is the will of both together. Would God create a world that kills himself? Today we will try once more to reach the world that is in accordance with your will. The light is in it because it does not oppose the will of God. It is not heaven, but the light of heaven shines on it. Darkness has vanished. The ego's idle wishes have been withdrawn. Yet the light that shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be within that we will look for it. The picture of the world can only mirror what is within. The source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. Grievances darken the mind, and a darkened world is seen. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts the will, and lets the world be seen in light. The barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between the mind and salvation. The reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? Forget the ego's arguments which seek to prove all this is really heaven. It is known that this is not so. This cannot be wanted for oneself. There is a point beyond which illusions cannot go. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness that is truly wanted. Such is the will in truth. And so salvation is the will as well. There is a desire to succeed in what is attempted today. It is undertaken with blessing and glad accord. Success will come today if it is remembered that salvation is wanted. God's plan is accepted because it is shared in. There is no will that can truly oppose it, nor is there any real desire to do so. Salvation is for you. Above all else, there is the desire for the freedom to remember who you really are. Today, the ego stands powerless before the will. The will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. Therefore, the exercises for today are undertaken in happy confidence. There is certainty that what the will desires to find will be found. What the will desires to remember will be remembered. No idle wishes can detain the mind or deceive it with an illusion of strength. Today, let the will be done and end forever the insane belief that hell is chosen in place of heaven. We begin the longer practice periods by recognizing that God's plan for salvation, and only His, is wholly in accord with the will shared with Him. It is not the purpose of an alien power forced unwillingly upon the mind. It is the one purpose in which the Father and the Son are in perfect accord. Success is certain today. The time has come for the release of the Son of God from hell and from idle wishes. The will is restored to awareness. There is willingness this very day to look upon the light within and be saved. After reminding yourself of this and determining to keep the will clearly in mind, say with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. Then let the will assert itself, joined with the power of God and united with the self. Place the remainder of the practice period under their guidance. Join with them as they lead the way. In the shorter practice periods, again declare what is truly wanted. Say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. Repeat this several times an hour. It is especially important to apply today's idea immediately whenever there is temptation to hold a grievance of any kind. This will help grievances be released instead of cherished and hidden in darkness. Lesson 73. I will there be light. The lesson is drawing a line between willing and wishing. That line is everything. A wish is a preference inside a dream. Will is the power of what is true. A wish says, let me rearrange appearances. Will says, let truth be what it is. So when the lesson says the will shared with God has all the power of creation in it, it does not mean the power to manufacture planets, bodies, jobs, lovers, outcomes, weather patterns, or personal destinies. It means the power that belongs to reality itself. Creation in A Course in Miracles is not fabrication. It is extension. It is the effortless radiance of what God is. Light does not strain to shine. Love does not strain to be itself. Truth does not labor to remain true. Creation is that kind of power. Not force, not effort, not control, not manipulation. It is the power of being what cannot be contradicted. The ego has no such power. It can only wish. And wishing is not creating. Wishing is pretending. Wishing is like drawing a kingdom in smoke and then panicking when the wind moves. Wishing is like a child putting on a paper crown and then issuing decrees to the furniture. A whole drama may arise from it. Fear may arise from it. Attachment may arise from it. But reality does not arise from it. That is why the lesson calls the ego's wishes unshared. They are unshared because God does not share them. Truth does not join them. Christ does not authorize them. The self does not extend through them. They belong only to the hallucinated private mind that wants something other than what is. A private wish is an attempt to have a private universe. A private grievance is an attempt to have a private law. A private self is an attempt to have a private meaning. That is what unshared means here. Not merely lonely, not merely secretive, but metaphysically unsupported. A fantasy may be believed by one mind. Reality is shared because it is one. Illusion is unshared because it is a departure into privacy. That is the ego's whole project, to privatize existence, to say, my pain is mine, my history is mine, my grievance is mine, my interpretation is mine, my righteousness is mine. But the moment reality is made private, it is no longer reality. It has become a claim, a performance, a defended position, a walled garden of make-believe. This is why the Course says the ego's wishes are not idle in the sense that they can make a world of illusions in which belief can be very strong. That line is enormously important. The ego cannot create reality, but it can generate experience within illusion. It can make a nightmare seem vivid. It can make guilt seem historical. It can make loss seem final. It can make a body seem like the self. It can make time seem like a prison. It can make attack seem justified. It can make a costume seem like an identity. A movie projected onto a screen can produce tears, terror, desire, and adrenaline. But the fire on the screen does not burn the theater. The ego's wishes are like that. Psychologically persuasive, emotionally loud, temporarily immersive, ontologically empty. They produce effects inside the dream, but they produce nothing real. That is the meaning of idle in the deepest sense. An idling engine makes noise, burns fuel, and gives the impression of motion, yet goes nowhere. That is the ego. A factory machine left running with no product coming off the line. A car engine humming in the driveway all night while nobody actually leaves. A mind spinning narratives, rehearsing grievances, predicting disasters, replaying betrayals, defending identities, and calling all that activity life. But in terms of creation, nothing is happening. No truth is being made. No self is being established. No reality is being improved. No holiness is being threatened. There is noise. There is expenditure. There is strain. There is smoke. There is heat. But there is no actual movement toward reality, because reality was never elsewhere. That opens the door to the line about idle wishes and grievances being partners. Why partners? Because a wish invents the false world, and a grievance sustains belief in it. The wish says, I want something other than what is. The grievance says, and here is who prevented me from having it. The wish says, I should be special. The grievance says, and they failed to recognize it. The wish says, I should be completed by a person, achievement, body, role, outcome, or future moment. The grievance says, and now I resent whoever or whatever blocked that completion. An idle wish is the blueprint of illusion. A grievance is the maintenance contract. The wish builds the stage set. The grievance keeps the lights on. The wish says, I need a world where lack is possible. The grievance says, then populate it with culprits. That is why the lesson says the ego peoples the world with figures that seem to attack and call for righteous judgment. Those figures are not really brothers. They are symbolic carriers of projected guilt. They are masks cast in the ego's theater. Each one gets a role. Betrayer, rejecter, competitor, manipulator, abuser, failure, temptation, obstacle. The ego does not merely perceive bodies, it assigns charges. It pastes meaning onto forms. Then it reacts to the meaning it itself assigned. That is why those figures are called middlemen. A middleman stands between source and receiver. The ego inserts an image between awareness and reality. Instead of meeting a brother, it meets an interpretation. Instead of beholding innocence, it beholds a role in its private courtroom. Instead of seeing the Christ, it sees evidence. Evidence for hurt. Evidence for injustice. Evidence for separateness. Evidence for specialness. This is what it means to traffic in grievances. The ego is a black market dealer in blame. It buys guilt wholesale and sells accusation retail. It takes the ancient hidden belief, I attacked God and broke reality, and breaks it into smaller transactions. Now the guilt is no longer cosmic. Now it is manageable. Now it has names and faces. Now it is a rude message, a failed marriage, a slight, a humiliation, a betrayal, a memory, a political enemy, a family wound, a body symptom, a future fear. The ego survives by distributing primordial guilt into local grievances. That is the traffic. Then comes one of the most brutal lines in the lesson. The will is lost in this strange bartering in which guilt is traded back and forth and grievances increase with each exchange. This is a marketplace of poison presented as commerce. The ego says, give guilt, receive innocence. But that deal never closes, because projected guilt is never gone. It only changes address. One mind says, "You are the reason I suffer." Another says, "No, you are." Then each collects proof. Each becomes historian, prosecutor, victim, witness, and judge. Nothing is resolved because guilt was never truly in the other to begin with. So every exchange increases the inventory. That is why grievances breed. A grievance never stays singular. It links. It associates. It recruits. One hurt calls up 10 others. One betrayal activates childhood. One criticism awakens a whole identity structure. One disappointment becomes evidence that life itself is against the separate self. This is bartering in hell's currency. And the more one trades, the poorer one becomes. Then the lesson asks, almost with divine sarcasm, whether such a world could have been created by the will the Son of God shares with the Father. Of course not, because creation does not divide against itself. Creation extends itself. It does not fragment, accuse, decay, and die. A tree does not hate its roots. A ray of sunlight does not declare independence from the sun. The ocean does not produce waves whose purpose is to stab the sea. If Father and Son share one will, then reality must bear the nature of that union. Wholeness, life, extension, peace, joy, not disaster, not predation, not mutual destruction. That brings us to the line, "Would God create a world that kills himself?" This must be taken all the way down. If God is life, then what could death attack except an image? If God is all, then what could exist outside him to oppose him? If the Son is part of God, then a world that kills the Son would be a world in which God creates his own opposite. That is metaphysically absurd. It would mean eternal life authored death, love authored fear, spirit authored flesh as a site of suffering, unity authored fragmentation, the infinite authored vulnerability, the changeless authored decay. The lesson is not merely being poetic here. It is dismantling the entire cosmos of separation. A world where bodies are born to suffer, age, compete, grieve, decay, and die cannot be creation if God is what the Course says he is. It may be an experience. It may be a projection. It may be a dream. It may be a classroom for correction. But it cannot be creation, because creation bears the signature of its source, and death has no divine handwriting on it. That is also why the lesson says there is a point beyond which illusions cannot go. Illusions can simulate pain. They can simulate separation. They can simulate terror, loneliness, humiliation, and loss. They can produce the full theater of hell. But they cannot actually become truth. A lie can be believed, repeated, defended, institutionalized, inherited, and worshipped. It still cannot become fact. A shadow can appear to cover a face. It still cannot stain the sun. That is the point beyond which illusion cannot go. It cannot alter reality. It cannot rewrite God. It cannot change the self. It cannot make innocence guilty. It cannot make the eternal temporary. It cannot make heaven hell except in hallucination. It cannot cross the boundary into actuality. That boundary is not maintained by struggle. It is maintained by truth being truth. Then comes the line that the picture of the world can only mirror what is within. That is not a motivational slogan. It is a metaphysical law of perception. Perception is always interpretation projected outward. The world seen is not neutral to the perceiver because the perceiver supplies the lens. A mind burdened by grievance sees confirmation everywhere. A mind trained in fear sees threat everywhere. A mind addicted to specialness sees comparison everywhere. A mind given to forgiveness begins to see light where darkness seemed to be. This does not mean that form changes instantly every time the mind shifts. It means the meaning of the world changes because the source of seeing changes. The prison may still appear, but the bars are no longer interpreted as identity. The body may still appear, but it is no longer mistaken for the self. Another person may still speak harshly, but the harshness is no longer made into proof of separation. The same scene is present. The inner narrator is not. That is why forgiveness reasserts the will. A grievance is the will misdirected into defense of unreality. Forgiveness is the withdrawal of that investment. It does not say the dream was lovely. It says the dream was not true. It does not glorify pain. It denies pain the right to define reality. And in that denial, the will returns to its natural allegiance. Not to self-protection, not to image management, not to private justice, but to truth. The ego argues that hell is heaven because the ego must normalize suffering to survive. It has to say conflict is love, possession is intimacy, control is care, anxiety is responsibility, performance is worth, pain is depth, sacrifice is holiness, body identity is selfhood. The lesson rejects all of that. It says plainly that suffering is not happiness. That sounds obvious, but the human condition is built on proving otherwise. People routinely call what wounds them meaningful simply because they are invested in it. They romanticize chains because they are afraid of open sky. Then the lesson says, God's plan is not the purpose of an alien power forced unwillingly upon the mind. This is vital. Salvation is not divine coercion. It is not celestial kidnapping. It is not God dragging a resistant creature back to heaven against its will. That would preserve separation at the very moment it claims to undo it. It would mean the creature has a real will apart from God's. The Course is saying the opposite. The resistance belongs only to the egoic layer. The deeper will has never disagreed with God. The surface screams. The depth consents. The noise resists. The truth remembers. So when the lesson says, then let the will assert itself, it does not mean strain. It means stop obstructing what is already true. A curtain does not create the sun by being pulled back. It merely stops pretending to be the source of light. The will asserting itself is like a buried spring breaking through packed dirt. Like a compass needle settling when the shaking stops. Like a machine finally unplugged from the false grid and reconnected to the actual power source. The will does not need to be manufactured. It needs to be uncovered. That is why the practice says, I will there be light. This is not personal dominance. It is not the little self bossing the cosmos around. It is not manifestation culture dressed in sacred language. It is the remembrance that the deepest desire of the sun is already aligned with truth. It is a declaration against self-obscuration, a refusal to keep funding darkness, a consent to stop hiding from what has never stopped shining. And why is it especially important to use the idea immediately when tempted to hold a grievance? Because a grievance is the moment darkness is being chosen as interpretation. Not permanently, not irreversibly, but actively. A grievance is the fork in the road where the mind says, I would rather be right than free. I would rather preserve the story than remember the self. I would rather maintain the wound than lose the identity built around it. That is why intervention must be immediate. Not because the situation is urgent in worldly terms, but because the mind is making a decision about what reality is for. A grievance is a seed. If cherished, it becomes a root system. If interrupted, it dissolves before it organizes perception. The lesson is teaching spiritual fire prevention, not post-fire analysis. And that leads to the question of how grievances are cherished and hidden in darkness. A grievance is cherished whenever it is stroked as identity, whenever the mind revisits it for emotional nutrition, whenever the wound becomes a private shrine, whenever the memory is polished, rehearsed, edited, and re-entered as proof of selfhood. Cherishing a grievance does not always look dramatic. Often it looks intelligent, measured, reasonable, even noble. It looks like clarity. It looks like healthy boundaries. It looks like just telling the truth. It looks like never forgetting what happened. But underneath, the grievance is being fed because the separate self feeds on contrast. And grievances are hidden in darkness whenever they are not brought to the light of inquiry and forgiveness. Darkness here means unconscious preservation. The grievance gets tucked behind other labels: discernment, justice, wisdom, standards, experience, maturity. Discernment may be real in its own place, but the ego uses lofty language as velvet drapery over old hatred. That is hiding in darkness, not always screaming, often curating, organizing, explaining, justifying, keeping the room dim enough that the grievance still looks valuable. The lesson is therefore not merely calling for positivity, it is calling for exposure. Bring the hidden bargain to light. What is actually being purchased with this grievance? Specialness, superiority, victim innocence, historical continuity, emotional leverage, permission not to love. Once that bargain is seen, the grievance loses glamour. It becomes machinery idling in an empty factory, a conveyor belt transporting nothing, a clerk stamping blank paper with great seriousness, a car revving in neutral while the driver insists a journey is underway. That is the story of the ego. Maximum noise, zero creation. Maximum interpretation, zero truth. Maximum grievance traffic, zero peace. The holy reversal in the lesson is simple and total. The world of darkness is not overcome by fighting darkness. It is undone by withdrawing the idle wishes and the grievances that support them. Then the mind discovers that light was not absent. It was obstructed. The will was not broken. It was bartered away for scraps. The self was not lost. It was overlooked beneath the crowd of projected figures. God's plan was not alien. It was the only thing ever truly wanted. So the practice for the day is not small. I will there be light means let private wishing cease. Let grievance lose its job. Let false middlemen be dismissed. Let projected figures stop standing between awareness and reality. Let the bartering of guilt end. Let the mind stop calling hell a home. Let truth be preferred to the drama built against it. And darkness is not my will means even more than it first appears to mean. It means suffering is not the will. Separation is not the will. Specialness is not the will. Attack is not the will. Body identity is not the will. History as prison is not the will. Private authorship is not the will. Death is not the will. There is one will, and that will does not flicker. It creates by being what it is. It extends light because light is what it is. The practice is simply the refusal to keep idling in the dark.